Hello and welcome to our webinar, C-TPAT. We're going to discuss today the application process. This seminar is brought to you by the Association for Trade Compliance along with our sister company, TradeLogic International. As always, we'd like to read our disclaimer. Information provided in this webinar and all training materials provided by AFTC are for informational purposes only. The information is not to be considered as legal advice or relied upon for any other purpose. Due to the complex nature of importing and import trade laws, importers are encouraged to exercise due diligence and to employ the services of an expert such as an attorney, a customs broker, or a trade consultant when evaluating their imports. More information can be found at www.cbp.gov. You may also feel free to contact us, info@aftcompliance.org, if you have any further questions or concerns. So today we're talking about C-TPAT, and first I'd like to explain a little bit about what C-TPAT is. C-TPAT is a program that was formulated by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection back in 2001 in response to the terrorist attacks of 9/11. The C-TPAT program is a supply chain security program and is a partnership between U.S. Customs and importers that allow customs and those importers to work together to keep America safe. C-TPAT is a voluntary program. However, U.S. Customs is encouraging importers to take part in the program and obtain their C-TPAT certification. Companies that are certified as C-TPAT companies receive tangible benefits, and there are more benefits to come. Some of the benefits include reduced number of examinations and delays on import shipments, and to be considered as a low-risk importer, which means that you get less enforcement scrutiny from U.S. Customs, and that's always a very positive thing. When you're C-TPAT certified, you can also work to become what is considered a trusted partner with U.S. Customs, allowing your company to enjoy even further benefits. So let's talk about the C-TPAT application process. One of the first steps is for a company to take a step back and look at their international supply chain from start to finish. This means that you'll take a look at your suppliers, your freight forwarders, ocean freight carriers, truckers, warehouses, customs brokers, and even your own U.S. facilities to examine the supply chain and see where there might be any risks or where any threats have been identified. You conduct a threat assessment to identify outside threats to your company's supply chain. This is part of the 5-step risk assessment process and is critical to obtaining C-TPAT certification. You conduct a vulnerability assessment, and this allows you to identify areas where your company is specifically at risk. Once you've taken the steps to do this vulnerability and risk assessment, the next step is to prepare a written plan of action. So you've identified potential areas where there may be risks. Now you're going to write up a plan of action telling Customs how you'll act in a way that will help mitigate these risks and help secure your supply chain. And then finally, you'll document your policies and procedures with an SOP manual that allows Customs to see exactly what steps you've taken and what policies you have in place to keep your supply chain secure. And then you're going to review that SOP and revise it as needed as you go forward. It's a living document that needs to be updated on at least an annual basis. A U.S. importer wishing to be C-TPAT certified must take a look at the C-TPAT security criteria, and I've highlighted here the main areas for that criteria. First, you're going to look at your business partners, and as I mentioned earlier, business partners could be your foreign suppliers, the ocean carriers that move your freight from one country to another, the freight forwarders that are involved in that process, your U.S. Customs broker, any warehouses that you might be using throughout the supply chain, and also truckers that move the containers or deliver the freight to the final destination in the U.S. Those are your business partners. You're going to look at container security procedures to make sure that ocean freight containers are carefully loaded and sealed so that no contraband can be introduced, and it helps secure that supply chain. You're going to look at physical access controls. In other words, how are people able to enter or exit your facility? Is it through locked doors? Do you use ID cards or keys or alarm codes? Those things all come into play. You're going to look at your personnel. Do you do background checks on your employees, both at the time of hire and perhaps on an annual basis as well, to make sure there's no issues that might pose a threat? You're going to look at your procedural security. What procedures and processes do you have in place at your facility that help you keep it secure? It's important that your employees receive security training and threat awareness training on at least an annual basis, but preferably several times a year. And that training should help them identify potential risks and allow them to understand the company policy as to how to report those risks. You're going to look at physical security. You're going to look at fences and the building structure of your facility. You're going to look at windows and doors. You're just making sure that the facility is secure and that only those people that should be allowed access are allowed access. And finally, you're going to look at your information technology, your IT security. Are your computers safe? Do you have passwords and logins that are specifically assigned to individual employees? And who controls that computer access? Do you have policies in place where your employees know what they can and can't do with your computers and your IT technology? These are the important areas of the security criteria that you're going to be required to look at as you move forward in the C-TPAT process. All right, we've talked a little bit about the C-TPAT security criteria. Now let's talk about some of the hot spots. These are areas that Customs has identified after working with almost 12,000 companies that are currently C-TPAT certified. Customs has identified these areas where there are some particular concerns, and each company needs to take a look at these and address them through their policies and procedures and the steps they've taken to help secure the supply chain. So we talked a little bit about your business partners. Again, those are foreign suppliers, freight forwarders, carriers, truckers, warehouses, customs broker. So do you have clearly defined procedures in place that tell you how to go about the process of reviewing and selecting business partners? That's critical. What do you know about those business partners? Have you visited their facilities? Do you know them because you've checked their references? Exactly how have you come to determine that these are the companies you want to do business with? We talked a little about container security procedures, and that's securing the container from the time it is loaded at the foreign supplier right on through the time that container is taken to the export ocean freight terminal in the foreign country and loaded aboard the ship and sent to the U.S. And then also when you receive that container at your facility here in the U.S., are you checking that security seal is still in place? Are you verifying that what is supposed to be in that container, what's been manifested as being in that container, is actually in that container? Are you taking a look at these things on a regular basis, and are you documenting that you're doing them? That's critical. You have to have procedures in place for inventorying, securing, handling, and using the high security seal. So your suppliers will affix a high security seal once they've loaded your container. Well, what are they doing to make sure those seals aren't being stolen or lost or misused? Do they have procedures in place that help prevent against that? And that's a critical part of C-TPAT. Physical access controls, we're talking about things like locks, alarm systems, and how you control visitor access to your facility here in the U.S., and also how your foreign supplier controls physical access at their facility. So Customs is going to want some details there. What systems do you have in place? Personnel security. This speaks about the keys that are being issued or the ID cards that are being issued to your staff. Are those maintained? Are they logged? Who's keeping track of all that? If an employee is terminated, who recovers that key or that pass card? Do you change your alarm codes to make sure that that former employee doesn't still have access? What about their logins to the computer system or other company systems? Are those taken away at the time of termination? It's very critical that you explain how you issue those at the time of hiring and how you recover those at the time of termination of that employee. Your procedural security has to be clearly defined and it has to be documented. I always tell my customers this: say what you do and do what you say. And what I mean by that is you need to document the policies and the procedures that you currently have in place, what your employees are doing on an everyday basis to keep your company and the supply chain secure. And then make sure once you document it that those procedures are being followed. It's important for management to be heavily involved in supply chain security in the C-TPAT process. Customs insists upon that. And it really means that you'll have to do documented audits that you can show customs. Let's talk a little more about security training and threat awareness. Are you providing that to your employees, and how are you providing it? Is it through webinars? AFTC offers some excellent webinars that you can take advantage of. Please contact us for more information about those. But there's other sources on the internet where you can get training regarding security training and threat awareness training. And it's important that your employees not only participate in that training, but that you document that they've participated in that training. Customs will be looking for that documentation. What about the security of your facility? Are there holes in the walls? Are windows broken? Are doors and locks not working properly? What about the cameras, security cameras you might have in place? Are they working properly? Well, it's important that your management, upper level management preferably, does a regular facility inspection and that they document that inspection with an audit form showing how they've gone through the facility and checked off in all these important areas. And finally, information technology. One of the keys is every employee should have their own login and their own password. Those passwords should be changed on a regular basis. We recommend at least on a quarterly basis. It could be acceptable that you do it every 6 months as well, whatever works best for your company. Just make sure that you have a policy in place that helps to maintain those logins and the security of your IT system. Okay, so we've talked quite a bit about the C-TPAT, what the program is, that it's a voluntary program, that it's a partnership between U.S. Customs and the trade community that helps to secure the supply chain and keep America safe. And that's important to all of us, of course. So your company is not C-TPAT certified today, and you've listened to this webinar and you say, okay, I think this might be something that would be beneficial to us and we'd like to partner with U.S. Customs. How do we go about doing that? So let's go over what the normal steps in the application process are. First, as we discussed earlier, you have to review your supply chain. Take a look at it from a threat assessment and a risk assessment approach. You want to look at the entire supply chain from the point of origin in the foreign country with your foreign suppliers, right through the time that cargo is delivered to your U.S. warehouse or maybe a third-party warehouse that you're using here in the U.S. How secure is that supply chain? Pick it apart step by step, break it down, and then look at each one of those steps along the process and see where there might be some danger, where there might be some risks, and then document what steps you're taking to mitigate or eliminate those risks. That's very important. You're going to have to gather a lot of information. You're going to have the participation of your foreign suppliers. You've got to get them involved. They've got to be able to tell you what steps they're taking to secure their facility. That's an important part of the C-TPAT security, the supply chain security. So you have to gather that information together. And then you also have to draft an SOP, a standard operating procedure, a list of the policies and procedures that you have in place that help your company do their part to keep the supply chain secure. And that has to be a written document. One thing I always tell people is the old KISS method, right? Keep it simple. It's critical that you have this SOP, but it doesn't have to be a novel. I would recommend in most cases that as you address the different parts of the C-TPAT criteria, that your SOP for each of those areas is maybe only a page or two long. In some areas, it may only be 1 or 2 paragraphs long, and that's perfectly fine. Again, say what you do and do what you say, and make sure that what you're doing fits within the C-TPAT security criteria. That's important because you cannot get certified if you're not meeting that minimum criteria. Let's talk about that for a moment. Minimum criteria. The security criteria that Customs uh, lists is the minimum. In other words, they would like to see you exceed this. They're always looking for companies that are exercising what they consider to be best practices. And companies that are recognized as having completed a process that includes best practices can actually be a higher level of C-TPAT certification than just the average company that's doing the minimum. So strive to be above and beyond, strive to get that best practices designation so that your certification can be a tier 3 certification. That's top of the line. That's the Cadillac, I guess we could say, of C-TPAT. And companies that are tier 3 certified C-TPAT company are companies that are going to see very few exams, very few issues with U.S. Customs. Customs will see them as a trusted partner, and that really works to your benefit. And once you've done all this, so you've done your review, you've gathered your information, you've got that SOP drafted, you have to submit the documents and information to U.S. Customs through the C-TPAT online portal to actually file your application. Now, let me say a few things here. First, C-TPAT application process is free. You can do it yourself from start to finish. I like to tell people that. I don't want anyone to think we're trying to sell them a service that they could do themselves. I say, sure. And I would be more than glad to point you to the C-TPAT website where you could pull together your own documentation, SOP, policies and procedures, and audit and review, and submit that to U.S. Customs. I encourage you, if you love a challenge, feel free to contact me and I'll tell you how to start that process. But as I mentioned earlier, we have a partner, a sister company called TradeLogic International. And TradeLogic International is involved in the consulting business. We do C-TPAT applications. We do C-TPAT audits and reviews. We do duty drawback. Anything to harmonized tariff classification reviews. These are things that we do through TradeLogic International. So as I'm speaking over the next minute or so on this slide, please note that I'm talking about TradeLogic International, a company that we are partnered with, and we would be happy to steer you to them for some excellent assistance through this process. But again, you can do it yourself, and I'd be more than glad to point you in that direction if you desire. So let's just say that TradeLogic, you've chosen them to help you with the C-TPAT process. So let's go through the steps. First, those documents that you gather, the information that you gather, you're going to submit it to TradeLogic for us to review. And we'll do a review of that, taking into account what we know about the C-TPAT application process and what U.S. Customs is looking for. We've worked very closely with U.S. Customs officials, trying to determine the best way possible to get them the information and documentation they need so that they can certify our clients as C-TPAT certified. So we work with Customs very closely on this. We're going to guide you through the process. TradeLogic will guide you through the process and all the steps required to draft your application. As that application comes together, we may ask for more documentation. We may ask you for another list of questions. These are all things we do to try to help make this process as smooth as possible and to present this application to U.S. Customs with the greatest likelihood of getting it approved and approved quickly. So as part of our procedures, we'll finalize and submit your C-TPAT application to U.S. Customs. That's done electronically. And then usually within about 90 days, Customs will review that application and reply. Now I can tell you from experience, Customs has not yet approved any company that I'm aware of on the first go round. So no matter how much you dot your I's and cross your T's, you can expect Customs will come back and ask for more. And that's a good thing. They're trying to secure the supply chain, and we want to help them do that. So when they do reply, TradeLogic will be there to help you respond to any questions or any information Customs needs, with our ultimate goal being to see your company C-TPAT certified. and a voluntary partner in the important task of securing our country and our supply chain. Okay, we're going to wrap up our webinar here. A couple more points I want to make. May reiterate a few points from earlier, and then I'll close. So first off, recognize that every C-TPAT application is different. Let me talk about that a little bit. U.S. Customs doesn't want to force companies to be in a cookie cutter mold where ABC company and XYZ company, who do two totally different types of importing, have to be alike to be C-TPAT certified. That's not the case at all. U.S. Customs recognizes that individual businesses have individual business practices and procedures and policies, and they take that into account. We just need to help you take a look at what you're doing today, the policies and procedures you might already have in place, and help you to streamline those and shape those so that they fit the C-TPAT minimum criteria. You have to do that to be eligible to be certified as C-TPAT. So we're going to help you do that. Like I said, every company's different. TradeLogic knows that, and we'll work with you to gather all the information we need to, first off, give you a quote for our services. There is a fee involved because there is time involved, there's expertise involved, but I think our quotes are very cost competitive compared to other companies that are out there, and I think you'll be quite pleased with the quote we're able to provide. Again, I want to make this note again. You have the ability to do the entire C-TPAT application yourself. And if you decide you want to attempt that, I'm more than happy to point you in the right direction where you need to go on the internet to get the process started. If you want to do that and even retain us as a consultant, just to kind of help you give it a once over before you submit it, we're happy to do that. We're here to help you. Obviously, like every other company, we want to be profitable, but at the same time, we want to keep our customers happy and we want to do the right thing. So, feel free. If you want us to do the whole thing start to finish for you, we're here for you. If you want us to just help you a little bit as you go through the process yourself, we're here for you. And if you decide, hey, I want to go this 100% on my own, I applaud you. I give you your due credit, and I'll be more than glad to point you in the right direction and hopefully hear back from you that everything went well for you. If you utilize TradeLogic, you're going to find that we're there every step of the way to help you through the application process. I've kind of outlined what that process looks like, but just understand this. Our ultimate goal is to get your company C-TPAT certified. It's important to us. It's important to U.S. Customs. It's important to our neighbors all around us that the supply chain is secured. There is a real risk every day that terrorists or other bad guys could find a way to use the international supply chain to harm Americans. And we just don't want to see that happen for a lot of reasons, mainly because we live here too. But also, we don't want to see your company suffering through that. And we surely don't want to see international trade suspended or delayed because something bad happened in the supply chain. So we'll work with you. We want to get you certified. Finally, I'll close and say contact us today. There's our email address, info@tradelogicintl.com. Or you can also call 678-426-5930, and we can answer any questions you have or provide any additional information. So that's what the C-TPAT application process. We're going to have further webinars in the coming months that will even go deeper into what C-TPAT's all about and what that process looks like and the things you can do, even if you're not C-TPAT certified, to help secure the supply chain. I hope you've enjoyed our webinar today. I would ask that you check back often on the AFTC website, as we'll be adding new webinars, usually about one a month, sometimes two a month. So make sure you're checking in. We always appreciate your feedback. You can send that feedback to info@aftcompliance.org, and we'll be glad to receive your input, whether it's positive, you thought I was a wonderful presenter, or whether you thought I need to go back to the drawing board. Either way, good or bad, we really want your feedback, so please do that. I hope you have a great day. I hope this has been beneficial to you and look forward to hearing from you soon.